everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video review, and today we're going to be doing my comic load for the week. Now, this is the first week of the month, and this is a big comic day for me, 12 issues for me to read. The main reason why this is a big week for comic books is because 4 of the titles are actually getting canceled, and I've been picking up the comics for DC that are getting canceled on the side, or some of them regularly, like Omac and Men of War, but I've been picking them up and reading them just for the sake of reading them and seeing if they were really good and to add them to my collection. Seeing that they weren't going to last long, only up to issues 8, there's no huge commitment factor, so I can add them to my collection and at least say I collected them. But yes, so I will be talking about the issues that are getting canceled, the titles that are getting canceled, and then we'll jump into the other titles. So first and foremost, at issue number 8, and all of them are issue number 8, we have Omac, the end of Omac. Now, I have been picking up Omac regularly, although some of the titles I've been picking up on the side that are getting canceled, I have been picking up Omac regularly. And this is the big climactic fight between Brother Eye and Maxwell Lord, between Checkmate and between Omac. In this, if you've been reading Omac as a title since the beginning, or if you've been reading it in general, you know what the style of Omac is, and this issue is pretty much that. A big slobber knocker slugfest between the 4 entities, between Checkmate and Omac, between Brother Eye and Maxwell Lord. Big fight, and it ends off on a very good note. Kind of a tragic note, but in a good way. It leaves possibilities open for Brother Eye as a entity, as Checkmate as an entity, as Maxwell Lord as a character, and more importantly, leaves a lot open for Omac and an interesting twist for Omac as a character. We know Omac shows up in Justice League International. Whether he's going to be a regular on that is debatable. I'll talk about that more when I talk about Justice League International, but it's good to see that while this is ending, possibilities are not ending. And while I am sad that this title is canceling, I mean, let's be honest, Omac wasn't the best title of the New 52, but it had something special to it. It was very Jack Kirby inspired with its art style and also with its tone, but it kind of was different from everything else in the New 52 because it felt like the good old Silver Age days, you know, with campiness and over-the-top sci-fi-ness, and it really just did a good job at doing that. So with this issue, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. It was a fun last issue. It did a very good job at wrapping things up and setting things up for the future for the characters. In some way, shape, or form, I'm going to see everyone from this comic show up in later DC comics. So really was happy with how Omac ended. Now the next title getting canceled was one of the titles I picked up on the side, and that was Hawk and Dove. Hawk and Dove, I love the concept of Hawk and Dove, the Avatar of War and Avatar of Peace working together. And I must admit, since the relaunch, the title hasn't been quite as good as it's been in the past and previous Hawk and Dove interpretations and incarnations. It hasn't been bad, where it's kind of funny. I was talking to my coworker about this and my friend, where Omac is very Silver Age inspired. This feels very 90s inspired with the tone and with the feel of it. I think the biggest thing that hurt Hawk and Dove, other than the writing being kind of meh, was the fact that we had no solid villains to grasp onto. I think they should have taken more classic villains from the DCU than new villains. So on the whole, this issue was to wrap up the stuff with the Hunter and who's controlling the Hunter and Hawk and Dove working together to defeat them. Very much like Omac, this leaves off possibilities for the characters in the future, but not quite as much as Omac did. It felt like the issue was a little bit rushed because the story arc was only 2 issues. But it wasn't a bad issue. I'll give it a 3 out of 5. It was fun. It was entertaining. The dialogue was a little cheesy and silly at times, and you can make a drinking game out of how many times Rob Liefeld drew Dawn's ass. But on the whole, it was an okay issue, and then ended on a decent note. Next issue getting canceled, or title getting canceled, is Men of War, which is a title that I've been very supportive of, a title that has surprised me and that I've enjoyed and I've been picking up regularly. This title, though, takes a step away from the traditional Men of War stories with Sergeant Rock and various different U.S. soldiers or military personnel, and it focuses on Frankenstein, Agent of Shade. Set in the 40s during World War II, is Frankenstein and robotic mechanism. I forget his name. I think it's Jack. I could be wrong. It's probably one of the characters in Frankenstein, Agent of Shade. But him and his wife working together to take down Nazis. On a whole, this issue was really fun. It makes me wish I actually picked up Frankenstein Agent Shade because it seems like it's kind of cool comic. I'm not going to pick it up, but this makes me wish I could. And I like the tone, and I really wish DC would do more stories dealing with World War II. Not necessarily with sci-fi or fantasy characters or superheroes, but with normal soldiers. I think it would be fun and interesting. This was, on a whole, a good issue. The art tone was good, and the dialogue was good. And for someone that hasn't read Frankenstein like myself, I felt welcomed, and I didn't feel lost or confused at all. All the information I needed about this character and his supporting cast showed up in this. So yes, Men of War, last issue, I'll give a 4 out of 5. Moving on to the last comic getting canceled this week would be, Static Shock, issue number 8. Very much like Hawk and Dove, I love the concept of Static. I love the character of Static. I think Static is a good character that is very underrated and is not used that much. Honestly, I think he should have been on the Teen Titans more than his own individual title, but still, I like Static. Unfortunately, this series hasn't been doing well, and there's a reason why it's getting canceled. This last issue is more or less like the equivalent to a clip show on television. We get to see Static's past, his present, and what he's been doing, and his life. We get to see him as the character. No real big action in this. There's a little bit in the beginning, but nothing really big. I have to say, out of the last issues, this was probably the weakest. I'll give it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. I really was hopeful for the series because I like Static, but I think if you compare it to Blue Beetle just beats it out in every way with recognizable villains in Blue Beetle, where all the villains in this not so recognizable. Good characterization of the character in Blue Beetle. I think Static was mishandled in this a bit, and the art was better in Blue Beetle. Scott McDaniel does the art in this, and while I love Scott McDaniel, especially his stuff with Nightwing, I don't think he was the best choice for Static. It just didn't fit the tone of the comic so well. So, yes. Static, I'm going to give 2.5 out of 5. Okay, so on to the normal comics that I pick up, although... Anyways, at Normal Comics, we start things off with Detective Comics issue number 8. We got a backup issue in this too. The basic story is that Batman's playing a dangerous game with the Scarecrow, and it also involves Hugo Strange and possibly Hugo Strange's son. And the Scarecrow is ticked off because someone stole his fear toxin formula and his anti-fear toxin formula and so on and so forth. So Batman needs to go throughout Gotham on a short time span in order to get things done to save a possible victim. Scarecrow says that there is someone, there's going to be a victim involved if Batman doesn't go through with this process. It's a standalone story for the most part. There might be a possibility of the storyline kind of picking up, but for the most part, this is a standalone story. It was an okay story. I think the art was good, and if you take it for what it's worth as a one-shot story, it was actually, it was decent. The backup story is a Two-Face story, and it's dealing with Two-Face, just doing Two-Face stuff. He wants to become district attorney again. We get to see how ruthless he is. Not as strong as the first story, but it wasn't bad. Combining the two stories together, this issue I'll give a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was okay. Standalone issue was nice, and I liked the interpretation of the Scarecrow here. More or less physically, aesthetically, than personality-wise, because he really wasn't scary, and the Scarecrow is meant to be scary. But on the whole, it was a good comic. Although I seem to be in the minority because I've been enjoying Detective a bit more than other people, but I think it's because I haven't been putting Detective at the level expectation-wise that Detective normally is at. Hey, whatever. Next we have Swamp Thing, and Swamp Thing is finally here, and he is going to raise some green hell. Basic concept of this is Alec Holland, he has the Swamp Thing powers, and he is going after the Rot. And that is the basic concept. And boy, what powers does he have? He can fly, he can formulate weapons out of his hands with materialized wooden weapons like blades and shields. And boy, is he pretty jacked up. What I liked in this more or less is the inner dialogue in Alec Holland's head on how he's adjusting to being Swamp Thing. On how he's saying, like, it feels like an outer shell that is around me. It feels like my vocal cords feel like wood and I speak differently. So, I liked how they handled the inner dialogue for Alec Holland in here. I thought the action scenes were good. And, for a entity like the Rot that's really been kind of overbearing and like a hopeless fight against the Rot, I think to have Swamp Thing come in and just massacre the Rot, no pun intended, was really cool. It leaves off on a cliffhanger, and we do get to see Abigail Arcane in her fully transformed Rot form. And I have to say that's the only downside. It was a little lackluster. It wasn't quite as momentous. I don't think her form looks that good. It doesn't look that grotesque. It looks more alien than anything. However, 5 out of 5. Swamp Thing continues to prove why it's one of the best of the 52. If you're not picking up Swamp Thing, I feel bad for you because you're missing out. We're moving from Swamp Thing to Animal Man. Last we left off with Animal Man. He and his family were circled by the Rot. His daughter decides to take matters into her own hands, and we get to see some examples of her power and some unique powers. It's almost like you can't kill this girl. In addition to Animal Man, he comes to the conclusion that him being around his family is just going to cause more trouble. He needs to be more proactive. He needs to find Swamp Thing, and he goes to attack the Rot. This leaves off on a big cliffhanger, big cliffhanger, and I don't want to tell you what it is, but it's pretty good, and it should make things interesting for the crossover we're getting with Swamp Thing in the coming months. 5 out of 5. There was really nothing wrong with this. This was... Animal Man, I think, hasn't been quite as good as Swamp Thing, but it's still been a great title. And just like Swamp Thing, if you're not picking up this title, I think you're missing out. I'm considering keeping with this title after the crossover because the characters have been so enjoyable and the atmosphere has been so good. So Animal Man, issue number 8, really good, 5 out of 5. Moving on to a Bat Family comic, we have Batwing, issue number 8. This is a climax between Batwing, Batman, Robin, Nightwing, and I believe it's Hardware and Massacre, or Hardware's Armor. Bit of a cliche reveal on who Massacre is. I saw it coming in like issue 2 or 3, which is fine. But how they handled with the characters reveal, I think, was decent. The issue itself left off on a good note. Some good fight scenes, and I liked Batwing interacting with the Batman family. The art was great, and although there was faults here and there, mainly how it was a predictable ending and a predictable twist, I have to say that with the characterization, with the action, the art, and the overall good dialogue, I have to give this a 4 out of 5. This was a good issue. Batwing continues to be a solid issue, and actually one of the stronger of the Batman families recently. On to Green Arrow. I feel like there was an issue between 7 and 8 that I didn't read, like a 7.5, that I totally missed out on something. Green Arrow is on the run from the Skylurkers and their father. One of the Skylurkers seems to have a thing for Green Arrow and wants to get away with him, which actually I think is the most interesting thing that's come out of this issue, is one of the Skylurkers kind of being rebellious and going against the norm and working with Green Arrow. Good is the story concept isn't bad. The Skylurker, I'll call her Skylurker number 1, the one that rebels, is pretty cool. And I kind of like the direction of where the story's going, The bad is the dialogue was not good at all, and Green Arrow's portrayal was not good. And again, it feels like it's like an issue past that stuff happened and I don't remember. 2 out of 5. I enjoyed Green Arrow surprisingly before this new creative team came on. Hopefully, this new creative team will pull out some better stuff. Maybe it's still early in their run, so for all we know, they could pull out some better stuff later. But yeah, 2 out of 5. Wasn't really enjoying Green Arrow this week at all. Next, we have Stormwatch issue number 8. Last issue was a bit of a disappointment for me. This issue picks up very nicely. Some great moments with Midnighter, with oh god, the little girl whose name still kind of escapes me. I'm still learning all their names, but Midnighter had some good moments in this. Martian Manhunter had some good moments in this, and the little girl had some pretty good moments. I think it's Jenny. I'm pretty sure it's Jenny. Let me actually just double check on that. But on a whole, this issue was very good, and it was much better than the previous issue. It leaves off on a very good note. Hold on, let me just get the confirmation here because I feel bad that I don't remember her name. Yeah, Jenny. Hey, I was right. It left off on a really funny, good note. I felt as though it tied the short story arc we had with the gravity-based monsters pretty well. The only thing I don't like is I don't feel as though this has much direction for the future just yet. I want it to be more involved with the Demonites. I think this is a good comic to get more involved with the Demonites. And the only other problem I have is the fact that I want John Jones to get out there and get his hands dirty a bit more. I got I got a few friends in the comics, 2 of which are cousins, and they work with me. And funny enough, I give them nicknames from Mortal Kombat. I call one of them Baraka, and I call the other one Johnny Cage, because his name is John. But, oh god, the light is coming down pretty hardcore. There, is that better? That's better. I got John into Blue Beetle and into Stormwatch, and we were talking back and forth. He said he loved it, but he wished Martian Manhunter would get his hands dirty a bit more. And I have to agree, Martian Manhunter has just kind of been standing around a lot. He needs to get his hands dirty a bit more. But yeah, on a whole, this was a good issue, and I will give it a 4.5 out of 5. It was fun, it was enjoyable, and it was well done. And I particularly like the ending, and what really pushes this comic is story may not be a strong point, but its characters are. So, good issue. 4.5 out of 5 stars. Coming to the last 2 issues of the day, we have Justice League International crossing over with Batwing. Now, Batwing is joining the team, but I don't know if it's going to be for an extended period amount of time. Maybe he's just doing it temporarily for this crossover, or maybe he might actually join the JLI. I think it would be good and bad if he joined the JLI. Good in that I think it would be good to have him on the team so it helps promote his comic a bit more. Should have more characters that have comics beyond this team. And bad because how do you rectify him being in Africa all the time and then jumping over on the JLI so much? I guess it's logical because the Justice League goes everywhere, the normal Justice League. So, yeah, the basic concept is Booster Gold teams up with Batwing, and we find out that there is more to these bombings on the UN than we thought. They are now meta-human based. It's not just the general public hating on the Justice League International. It's meta-humans. We also get Omac show up in this, and it was really cool how he showed up. The story on a whole is interesting and fun. The problem is I felt as though, although a lot happened in this, not a lot happened. If that makes any sense. I didn't get a feeling that there was too much content-wise in this, but there was. So, I don't know, maybe it's just me and how I read it. But on a whole, I'll give this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Decent issue, and I look forward to the Omac crossover. And rounding out the week is Superman's Action Comics, issue number 8. This is wrapping up the Brainiac story arc, and I want to just state this right here, right now, So you guys know, I do not like the redesign on Brainiac. I'm very liberal, maybe, for lack of a better term, when it comes down to the redesigns that they do. There's very few things I'll hate on. I'm very accepting of change, but the Brainiac redesign was atrocious. Having him be like a centipede thing. What is with them? I liked Brainiac best in the Jeff Johns Brainiac story, which came out in, what, 2009? 2000, yeah, I think 2009, before the World of New Krypton. Yeah, it's just basically Batman, not Batman, wow. Yeah, Batman should be in this. No, basically Superman versus Brainiac versus Metallo. And the reason why I say Superman versus Brainiac versus Metallo is Metallo switches sides back and forth here. John Corbin is on, sometimes working for Brainiac, but then he breaks the hold and he works for Superman. He goes back and forth, which adds a layered depth to Metallo. And I kind of hope that Metallo in the New 52 becomes more of a puppet of the government than an actual villain, a rogue villain. And it seems like it's going in that direction, which I think would be good. The dialogue wasn't quite as robotic as it was in the previous issue. It felt a little bit more natural, but it still is classic Grant Morrison dialogue. We're still unclear if Superman can fly or not. I don't think he can. But that's okay. At the end, there's also an artistic change with Superman dealing with Metropolis. This issue was okay. It was good. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 because I was entertained by it, and it left off on some pretty good cliffhangers, particularly who Clark is getting all his information from. But like I said, I didn't really like the Brainiac redesign, and the dialogue could be a little bit better. And I think that's what hurts Grant Morrison a lot. But besides that, it was okay, and I enjoyed it for the most part. 4 out of 5 stars. So yes, this was a pretty big week, but it will be smaller next month because we won't be having 4 titles. It's sad to see some of them go, some of them not so sad. But there's always possibilities with these characters in these stories. So I'm going to end this video here. This is Andrew saying peace out for now.